We are about to start. Let's give now a warm welcome to our guest today, Michael Jenkins. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Michael, for being here. It's my great honor having here Michael Jenkins, the author and CEO of Running Software and the creator of Wall Street Radio, the best stock market simulation game of all times. Thank you for being here, Michael. It's a great honor for me. So my pleasure too. So this game is played in 112 countries, played by 9-year-old kids up to fund managers and corporate CEOs. That's right, Michael?
And people up to my age even.
So for the people who don't know, Michael is the creator of the best stock market simulation of all times. There is no match to this game because you are a corporate. It is a stock market in which players try to build their corporate empires by fair means or foul, while struggling with the attacks from the SEC, Congress, powerful unions, corrupt governments, ruthless competitors, man-made calamities, economic disaster, all inside one game. So there is no match to your game. Is that correct, Michael?
That's pretty much describes it. Yeah, I've tried to build just about everything I could think of that I've learned in my life as a doctor and as a certified public accountant and economist. I've kind of been a jack of all trades. Yeah, this game has been it started out as a little hobby when I was in law school. I started thinking about doing it. And
that was in 1986 or prior to that year?
That was back in the 1960s before personal computers had even come along. And I initially was going to do a board game, something like Monopoly, except with corporations instead of real estate. But I figured out pretty quickly that just was not feasible without having a computer. And of course, not everybody, hardly anybody had access to a computer.
So you,
yeah, go ahead.
You made this game in which language you use?
When I finally programmed it in 1980s, I just did the Microsoft Basic, which was kind of the quickest way to do anything back then. I didn't know anything about programming, but it was so easy to do that first night I tried to do something, I wound up spending the whole night on the computer and saying, "Oh, this is not hard." And at that point, I thought, "Wow, now maybe I can make the game into a computerized version." So that's where it began. Actually, in 1984, and it took me about 2 years.
2 years developing the game. The first version. Now we are version 9. The first version was in 1986.
Yeah.
Wow.
My book publisher published it then, and it got a fair amount of publicity. My publisher was in Silicon Valley, and I got interviewed by the local newspaper and the picture in the paper that everyone reads in Silicon Valley. So it kind of caught on at that point.
Michael, I think, I'm a gamer too. I'm thinking maybe this is the game with the largest amount of years of development, more than 30 years of upgrades in history of PC games, right?
That is possibly true because I've been working on it continuously all of these years.
I'm pretty sure there is no PC game with 30 years of improvements.
Probably not. There are games that are older than that, like Pong.
My God.
Or Pac-Man, but I don't think they've ever really changed.
This is just amazing. So let's go back to the story of the man behind the game. So you started as a lawyer and a graduate from Harvard. That's correct.
That's correct. Yes.
And then you move in the law firms, all related to the stock market.
Related to finance.
Finance, okay.
In fact, when I came out of law school, I just decided I don't really want to practice law, so I went to work as an economist first, and did that a couple of years, which was very interesting. Learned a lot about economics and discounted cash flows, kind of the mechanics of finance. And After a couple of years of that, I decided to become a CPA. So I joined one of the big CPA firms.
So you got your Harvard degree in the 60s and you CPA degree in the 80s, right?
In the 70s.
In the 70s, okay.
Yeah. So I was doing that until about 1976. And I realized I was basically practicing law at a CPA firm, doing really high-level tax work on billion-dollar mergers. And
Billion-dollar mergers.
yeah, so it was really interesting work. And I got to see how the inside of these really complex transactions work. And of course, as I was doing that, I was taking notes. And I want to build this into the game, which I did.
Amazing. So you launched the version in the 80s. How many hours? 2 years. You said only 2 years only for the first version.
Yeah. It was compared to the current version. It was very simple. It basically just had stocks and bonds, and you could trade those. But it also had even before graphics were becoming common in computers, I figured out a way to make a stock ticker run and a news ticker scroll, which people all, whoa, it's really cool.
It's really cool. Yes.
So it was basically a stock bond game. But as the years have gone on, after I took it back from the publisher in 1990, he decided he didn't want to publish it anymore. It wasn't selling that well. So I've been self-publishing it since 1990. So then I started adding things like, initially I added options, trading put and call options, because that was something I'd started doing myself back in, I think, 1967 was the first time I was trading options in the real world. So I had a lot of experience in that. So I built that experience into the game as well. And gradually added more things like futures, commodity futures trading, which got real complex. And it took me a while to work that out.
I believe that there are no PC games, and there are no simulation from any stockbroker of real life that match your game.
I have not come across any. In fact, I get customers selling all the time, but they all these and all these other.
They are not even close.
They say they're like for children.
They are not even close, right?
Yeah, apparently not. No.
It's so impressive because one of the things I wanted to ask you is the company works with a database of 1,000 companies. I think the number is 938 because I play the game. That's correct? But you have 1,600, I think, 1,600.
Yeah, the game actually starts off each game with the potential of 1,600 companies, but about 500 or 600 of them are basically just shell companies that you can use to start up new companies. So the number of companies in the game is going to vary. It's usually about 1,000 to 1,100.
Yes.
That are live at any one moment. And they're all operating independently in a smart fashion. Like each company is trying to figure out how to position itself within its industry, dealing with the financial, the economic model that it's operating in. So it's like all of these little cells operating independently. And you get to kind of watch it as you're playing and try to figure out, okay, which one's going to succeed. Very much like the real world.
Pretty much like the real world, because for the community, my community follows precious metals and crypto. There are two audiences together. And this game, you can launch your IPO, trade crypto, buy gold and silver futures, take physical possession, and you have different costs and fees to pay. Very realistic game. You can do some fundamental analysis. The place I learned the effects of fundamental analysis with the dynamics of the macroeconomics engine that it's so real, like it blows your mind. So real, Mike. And there are things that I suspect you also know about technical analysis for the way you present the charts and the behavior and some patterns in the chart. Is that correct?
Yeah. I haven't gone heavily into that, but I do have charts for everything. So you can look at the charts, and when you see something's going straight up for 15 months in a row, you may decide it's
You,
time to.
you added something of momentum, action, and patterns and behaviors, right?
Right. Because the simulation is real enough that when conditions change and the industry is in bad shape, it starts improving because a lot of the weak players have gone bankrupt or just have been damaged financially so that they can't expand. Then the ones that are able to expand successfully, they can have a long run, but because things are improving and therefore their quarterly earnings are going up. When that happens consecutively, the stock price tends to reflect that kind of success. So again, the frequent comment I get from people is that it's so realistic.
It's so realistic. Yes.
They feel like they're playing in.
It's not a game. If you are playing the game and if you get hit with random events, and when the Federal Reserve shows up and touch the interest rate, all started to move like a symphony. You have seen that some companies are some benefit from the new environment, and others get punished, like the banks with very high interest rates, and you will have to switch and move if you are trading the game. Very fascinating, Mike, and very fascinating.
Yeah, you have to constantly be responding to the economy because when the GDP suddenly turns south, you get into a recession, boy, things can get bad for your company in a hurry. Or if interest rates really go up and you're in housing stocks, suddenly your industry is going to get clobbered.
I have a lot of people in a Reddit community, which is Wall Street Silver community, with people following metals, and you have always all the industries, and if you buy precious metals, you have always like a cap growth rate. If you go to banks or insurance or biotech, you get higher market caps while playing games. So that's more easy launching a bank than holding a miner. That's one of the experience I had with the game.
Yeah.
So the real feeling that you have so for all the people who are very experts in economy or macroeconomics, what rules are inside the macroeconomics engine? How is the magic? Whatever you can tell about the magic inside the macroeconomics engine.
Yeah, it's I call it largely a kludge because it's not like a real econometric model that like serious economists try and build our economy. Because I've only got 1,600 corporations, that can't be the whole world. But what I do is I just have a lot of little rules in it that trigger different responses to different stimuli. And
how many rules, Michael? How many rules are in the secret of the ancients and the deep?
I couldn't say.
You want to share the secrets of the magician?
No, just because I don't have it laid out that logically. It's just that I have a lot of tweaks, and what I've done is over the years I've seen things. Well, that doesn't look realistic enough. It's not reacting the way I think it probably should. So I go in and I put in a little tweak to change something when a certain situation arises. So the whole effect of it looks like a real economic model.
It really looks that way.
It's a simulation. That's all it is.
There are some mean reversions rules, right? In some part of the ancient.
Yeah. I have a lot of things like that where something goes on too long. It can only go so far before it starts reverting back to the mean.
Yes, you can really smell the functioning inside the rules, and it's because people on choice. So the game is so good that you were hired or your product was bought by universities, right? Could you please tell me that students from universities of Mexico, I think, of Canada, they bought your product?
Right. I haven't had a lot of exposure, but a few places have come across it, and I've licensed it to them. And much earlier, when I just had the DOS version, I had some law schools that were using it to teach mergers and acquisition classes because it does mergers and acquisitions so realistically.
It's real, super realistic.
And that's part of what I think makes it kind of unique, because I don't think anybody without my background, considering how difficult it was, even with the background I have in mergers and liquidations and corporate finance, to be able to do all of these types of transactions in a way that actually work out like they should.
Michael, you do all by yourself, with no help, right? You call.
Yep. I'm a one-man operation. Not a software engineer, so I basically just taught myself to program basic.
So you maybe are the developer of the game with more years of development, most likely on Earth.
Probably.
So you launched a book. I think it was in the 80s, right? You started selling a book, which was a success.
Yeah. I actually had a whole book series of tax and legal books for small businesses. It was very successful for about almost 20 years until my publisher went broke. The business as well.
So for the crypto community, you added crypto, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. Why these two? Why these two cryptos? Why did you add cryptocurrencies? What made you add these cryptocurrencies to the game?
I resisted that for a long time, but I kept having customers saying, "Hey, why don't you put in cryptocurrencies?" They were playing with Bitcoin in the real world. So I finally said, okay, I'll just add that in as another asset class.
You added like another asset class. So I was playing the version 9, trading crypto, and I felt like you wanted to teach that you have a crypto which is a very volatile asset in a huge range, and it moves there, and it's just it. That's
very volatile. It's like
and a huge range between 40 and 100, and whatever happens is completely random, the rules behind the cryptocurrency behavior. Is that what you tried to develop there?
Yeah, that is actually what I did. A little bit of an inflation factor. So
there is inflation factors here.
But it's only like 4% a year, so you could still go broke holding it for 20 years in the game.
Oh, amazing.
So the trick is to buy it when it's cheap and sell it when it's dear.
It's amazing, Michael. The game is really amazing. So this is one of the most important financial tools for financial education, of course, for kids and for students and for trading and for millennials, for every age. And for, you said there are even CEOs talking about your game. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I have all kinds of like hedge fund managers, people like that send me letters or emails. I'd say, man, I love your game. I do this in the real world, but this is so close. I don't lose any money.
When you get bankrupt, you get some special photos on quotes. Where did you get all that funny part of the game when you get broke?
That was just something I decided to add, kind of rub it in when you lose. Suddenly get pictures of a bread line or a soup line. Say that this is where you ought to be.
Very funny part. And the computer makes fun of you, of the gamer, of the player, when you get broke. Like I warn you.
Yeah.
They're very exciting. Maybe I should ask you now. Why did you add the spread rumors features that you have to destabilize the game like Big Red? Is that very the influence of the movies of the 80s, like Wall Street movie? What's the spirit behind the spread rumors feature?
Yeah, to try to make the game kind of competitive for multiple players, and of course it is competitive because you can have up to 4 computer players that you're competing against, but you can also play against other humans. So in order to make it more competitive, so people kind of get at each other, I put in things like filed harassing lawsuits. So if you see one of the other players has gotten in a real weak situation where they're heavily in debt and their stocks have gone down, you may be able to kick them out of the game by filing a harassing lawsuit against that they can't afford the legal fees to stay in the game. Or you can sue one of their companies, bankrupt their company. And it happens before they can countersue you if you're ahead.
And the games it's very hard. We're fighting each other.
Oh yeah, and you have antitrust lawsuits going constantly against any companies that get too dominant in their industry, and then the players themselves file these antitrust lawsuits, which you're not guaranteed to win. But
so
the bigger the monopoly the company has, or closer to monopoly they have, the more vulnerable they are. So sue the daylights out of them.
Yeah. Michael, you made the most realistic PC games of all times. Now in Utah, right? United States.
Yes.
Very close to a very beautiful park, Zion National Park.
Yeah, I'm just about 40 minutes from it. So it's a beautiful part of the country here. I look out my window right now, about 2,000, maybe 1,500 foot big red cliff about a half mile away.
So you're retired?
Except for doing this, yes.
Except for the game?
Yeah, except for the game. I retired from law practice, in 1986. It's been a long time.
But Michael, with such amazing knowledge of macroeconomics, I want to ask you about the real life now. How do you see the market? What are you seeing from the market? Crypto, inflation? What can you tell us about the real economy now? What's your view? What's your opinions about current state?
I am very concerned right now, particularly about inflation. In the U.S., anyway, I tend to be U.S.-centric, obviously. But we have done things in recent years, like just the last couple of years, to shut down a lot of oil refineries. And either shut them down or convert them to biofuel refineries, which are fine, but only produce about 1/10 of the fuel that the oil refineries did. So I'm afraid our current oil shortage is self-induced and may be permanent, because there hasn't been a new refinery that's been built since 1975 in the U.S., because they just aren't allowed. So I think we're going to have really real continuing problem with energy, and that energy shortages, as those get worse, that just makes all, inflation, everything.
My country is suffering 60% inflation, and we went from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 now. So I fully understand what you are saying. And all the people from the United States, I see the analytics and what they are searching for, and they are also very worried about food shortages. Have you listened about food shortages? People are starting to get worried about food shortages or a food supply crisis.
Yeah. And we have strange things happen in the last 3 or 4 months. There have been over 100 food processing plants that have burned down or blown up.
Or hacked.
And nobody talks about it much. But
there are very specific YouTubers talking about the man-made food crisis.
Yeah.
Maybe a man-made food crisis. Do you believe it?
It really seems like somebody is trying to create a real crisis, and that's very scary.
It's pretty scary.
Not just as an investor, but just as someone who wants to keep eating regularly.
So, Michael, here we are a world top export, and mysteriously we have a diesel crisis. And it's just like the United States, so the price of all food exports will go higher. And we have one of the main top 5 gas reserves of the world. So it's strange happening with the gas oil. So with all the production, the gas supply, things that get stopped by politics, I still don't know why, but I see the effects that will add to the global mess that we are seeing with the food shortages. So do you trade the markets?
Like the
Do you buy? Are you trading stocks or something?
yeah, I've been trading stocks since I was 21. So but yeah, I kind of cut my teeth on the stock market.
What stocks do you like, or what sectors do you like the most?
Well, right now I don't like anything because I've been getting my head handed to me the last month or two. But I was doing real well till a month or two ago with a lot of energy and copper and platinum mining stocks.
What do you think about gold and silver? And they are not been performing very well with inflation this year.
Yeah, that has really surprised me how gold is not because I have a lot of gold mining stocks and they're definitely not doing well, and because gold is not doing well itself, and I keep wondering how long the price can stay down with this kind of inflation because as it gets worse, all of the costs of these mining companies are going up, so they're going to be cutting back production. And when you cut back production, you generally wind up getting higher prices. So I'm basically hanging on to the gold stuff for the long term.
Do you own silver too? For your silver, you have
Silver, I'm not into silver.
but into gold.
I got into platinum, which is a big platinum producer in South Africa, on the premise that they were going to be doing well because as demand picked up for automobiles again and catalytic converters. But the big problem has been is automobile production. That's been slow all over because they can't get semiconductors. So everything is connected to something else that's causing problems right now.
I guess you are profitable after developing the most fascinating economic engines in the PC game. Have you made some profit from the years, right?
Oh, yeah, it's never been a big money maker, but it's just something I do out of love. It's just something I work on practically every day. If I have a spare minute and I've got a new idea, I sit down. Okay, how can I build that into there or create a new scenario? I don't know if you've played it enough
Oh, I play a lot. Hours.
to see these scenarios that pop up every now and then.
Infinite.
Most of which are black swans.
Black swans. Yes. Bad news. If inflation, you get hit with inflation sometimes, and the Federal Reserve comes back and moves the rates, and everything crashes.
Yeah,
Lots of
things like peak oil shortage or a pandemic, global pandemic. I have just about every bad scenario I have built in. It don't happen every game, but if you play it long enough.
So, which sectors or industries do you believe will be best for the future environment in the U.S. with high inflation, maybe a hard landing of the economy? What under this? Well, should we focus on some particular sector, industries?
I think probably food stocks, food processors are going to become important as long as there's food available. That's the only question.
I believe the same.
Yeah.
I believe food will be.
I think food and ammunition.
Ammunition. Okay.
Very smart.
Do you have some books you would recommend, or authors you would like to recommend to the audience?
Not anything I've read in recent years. The sort of classic that really got me fascinated more than anything was The Money Game, written back probably around 1968 or something by Adam Smith.
Adam Smith, the classic book.
Yeah. Not the author's real name. He used a pseudonym. I forget his real name, but he used the pseudonym of Adam Smith. And The Money Game, and it's funny.
Is this book about the Federal Reserve?
About what?
The Federal Reserve? Is this book about the Federal Reserve?
No, it's basically just about how Wall Street works, and by a guy who was a real insider back during the real boom in the 1960s.
Money Game by Adam Smith is the name of the book.
Yeah, and one thing, it is just hilarious. The guy has a wonderful sort of graveyard sense of humor.
So, one of the things I want to ask you is you have a life very close to canyons, a national park there. You almost get killed. When was that? You almost get killed with an accident.
Oh, well, I've had a few close calls. My mountain bike crashes being one of the worst, and also river rafting on the.
River rafting, yeah.
Yeah, that was the scariest day of my life.
What version was that? What version of the game was running in that moment? Version 5, 6?
That was about the time I started the game.
Oh, we almost lose the opportunity. Okay.
Yeah. I almost didn't get to this.
Wow.
No, it was a rafting trip on the Colorado during the highest water they had like 20 or 30 years. So the waves and the rapids were just enormous. And we found out just as we were going in that one of the guides on the boat the day before had fallen overboard, and they hadn't found her body yet. So that made us all kind of take a deep breath. But we all got through it alive, and it was definitely a scary experience. It made the Grand Canyon. You've probably seen the videos of people going through the Grand Canyon on paths, and that's really exciting. But this was like about two levels of fear higher than that, since I've done both.
Wow.
But yeah, almost lost me there in 1980. I think it was about 1986.
Wow. So you were exploring American Indians' ruins. What have you found there? Any story to tell about that?
Nothing particular.
How you found gold?
I didn't find the lost Inca gold. No, it was just something I discovered when I went to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, which I'd never heard of until I moved out to this part of the country. And I went to it and drove in there, and here were these huge ruins. And I'd had no idea that there was anything like that in North America. I mean, in South America, I knew had very extensive ruins. But these were really impressive. So I spent a number of years going to all of the major, they call them the Anasazi ruins. They're all over the southwestern U.S. And they were interesting people who just disappeared about 900 years ago. Apparently drought killed them or forced them to move away to the mountains. Their civilization just came to an end very, very quickly after about 20, 30 years. Just constant drought. Kind of like we're having right now here.
Michael, I have to ask for the kids, what's your view on Bitcoin, on the future of cryptocurrencies?
I am very indecisive about that. I've tried dabbling in Bitcoin, some of the Bitcoin stocks actually, and Ethereum. And I made a little money, and then I got back in and lost it. So I broke it about even. I just don't have any idea. I think they could go a lot lower. But if they do, if Bitcoin gets down to about $5,000, I'm going to be a buyer. But until then, it looks like the momentum is downward. But it's always hard to catch a falling knife.
Well, and I have very specific community, and you talk about platinum. I go back to the metals. You have gold, silver, platinum. Which metals do you like the most? Which metal do you like the most?
I think if we come out of this mess we're in, platinum that may have more potential.
Why is that? Because of geopolitics and the concentrated supply? Is that the reason?
It's particularly this one big South African country, Sibanye Stillwater, is by far the largest producer in the world. I believe that they're not a monopoly, but they're close to it. And the uses of platinum in making semiconductors, electronics generally, is just growing like crazy, as well as being used in cars, which that will eventually taper off as we have fewer and fewer gasoline burning cars. But I think long term it's probably got a really good future. And gold to me is kind of a bet that at some point the central banks are going to decide to use gold as backing if their currencies, like the dollar, get beat up too badly.
You believe they're going to go back to the gold-backed currencies for?
I think there's a possibility of it, although I've been thinking that for years. They haven't moved any more in that direction. But from things I see the Chinese and the Russians doing, Russia is doing very smart things with the ruble, and apparently they're now backing it with gold. That has made it one of the really strongest currencies in the world, despite the fact that we're trying to beat it down. We didn't do a very good job of it with all of the sanctions.
Michael, I want to know your investment secrets. What are you? A fundamental analysis, a swing trader, a technical analysis, chart guy? What do you do?
I'm basically a fundamentalist. I've done pretty well with it over the years.
So you are a long-term buy and hold fundamental analyst. Let's say that's the
pretty long term.
pretty long term.
Yeah, if I hold something a good while and it's going up a whole lot, and it's like things are changing for that particular company or industry, then I try to get out of it while the getting is good.
So you swim into the balance sheets of the games of the stocks to find your next pick, or you just?
No, it's just from reading the newspaper.
Reading the newspapers, and you go check the balance sheets of that companies.
Oh yeah. I'm a great believer in balance sheets. Although in recent years, it seemed like balance sheets almost haven't mattered. But back in the 70s, when the markets were really bad for years, I did quite well because I would go in and I would buy these bonds and kind of beat up companies. Sometimes these bonds would be yielding 5-30%, and we're going to pay off in 3 or 4 years. So I would actually go in and analyze to the extent I could their cash flow. I thought they were going to be able to pay off those bonds. I'd buy them, and did quite well, despite the fact that the markets were really pretty awful all through the 70s.
Yeah, it was bad years with high inflation, especially the end of the 70s in the US, right?
Yeah, that was when inflation really peaked. It hadn't been that bad since but we're almost back to that point. In fact, I was just listening to someone yesterday pointing out that there's an organization that keeps track of inflation the same way the government did back in 1980 before they changed a lot of ways to make it look less like there's less inflation. And according to these guys, they said we're actually at about 16% right now over last year instead of 8.5%. So that the government figures really understate the amount of real inflation. Of course, you go to the grocery store, everything's up 30-40%. And gas is up 67% here.
Michael,
yeah.
I want to ask you, will you add new features to the game? What's coming for the game? Oh, my internet is unstable now. Hello.
Well, to be honest, I'm kind of running out of ideas.
War, Ukraine war, pandemics.
Yeah. I mean, I may come up with some more scenarios, but in terms of asset classes, I put in just about everything I can think of that I don't know anything about. Like I said, I added options, I added futures, and physical commodity trading, and I also didn't mention interest rate swaps.
So interest rate, which is highly sophisticated for a stock market simulation game.
You can do it in this game. It's something you can't really do in the real world if you're not a billionaire.
I never seen a stock market simulation game with interest rate swaps in the game.
No, you probably won't.
It's the only game so advanced.
And I mainly put that in because Wall Street Raider is the game where you start off as a billionaire. You start off with $1 billion US or in other currency. So I made it that way so you can actually take over companies and try and manage them. And if you take over a bank, then you might want to do interest rate swaps. Because in the real world, those are done like about the tens of billions of dollars per contract. So, that was just another tool to add to the toolkit if you're taking.
It's amazing the interest rate risk strategy that you have to use in the game. It's so realistic, that part, because I suffer daily with my job, and you made it all in the PC game, which is so rare. So it's just amazing. So, Michael, you made probably one of the most important financial education tools on earth. What do you? Yes, I'm a big fan of you and big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. I really want a great a financial educator. What do you want to tell to all the audience who got kids? They should all learn about this PC game. Maybe, what do you want to tell about the financial education? What's your message?
Some of the feedback I've had from people is that they've introduced their kids to it as young as 9 years old, I've heard, and that the kids love it, and they also begin to really learn about how money works, because it's a real schooling if you play it enough. And I've had quite a few people from around the world who'd been playing it since the 1980s or 1990s when they were kids, or at least teenagers, and will write me and say, I started out as a poor kid in the Philippines, and now after playing your game for years and years, I learned enough that I was able to get a job, and now I'm a floor trader with Morgan Stanley in Shanghai or something. So when I get that kind of feedback, I know it's something that the children can understand. That was part of my whole idea, was to make it a game that was really easy to play, but to play it really well, kind of like chess.
Yes, it's like chess. You have to go after different environment scenarios, chasing the game.
And practice makes perfect.
And adjusting your portfolio and strategies and vehicles and asset classes. And
I think probably initially when most kids play it, they probably just say, okay, how do I make my stock that I won't go up? And, they're trying to play their stock. But as they get into it deeper, they understand all of these extraneous factors that are coming in besides what they're doing with the company that will affect their stocks. So, like the economy, or like if there's a oil shortage, and they're in the industry like the airlines that's intensive in using oil, then they have to get smart enough to realize,
and they get all the profits get destroyed very quickly when the environments change in the oil crisis.
Right. So in that situation, they either have to decide, okay, am I going to sell the company? And it's always a big cost to try to sell a whole, unless it's being bought up by somebody that wants it. So you either have to look at that, or, okay, well, I don't want to sell it now. So maybe I'll just short a lot of, or buy a lot of futures on oil to offset my operating losses. But if it keeps going up, so you can do things like that to hedge your company's profits if whatever commodities are real critical to that company.
So you believe the best hedge for inflation is food prices and maybe platinum? That's it? So you mentioned the hedging.
I would think platinum's about as good a thing as you could find. And Bitcoin, if it ever gets slow enough, I can say down somewhere around $5,000.
5,000? You want to really crash?
Yeah, well, it's already down to.
That's a bit greedy, Mike.
It's only down 70%.
So crossing fingers, it's go all the way back from 20 back to 5K, and you buy for 5K and you hold there.
I'm not involved in it right now.
But you will buy crypto for Bitcoin for 5K.
If it got there, you bet I'd be buying it, just stashing it away.
Seems a bit greedy. Thank you, Michael. Your software will be in the description down below this interview. But I wanted, if you could say a message for all the people who is your fans, or people who should buy the most amazing stock market simulation game of all times with more than 30 years of upgrades. What do you want to say for the future?
Yeah, I would just say to people out there that haven't been familiar with it, which is most of the world, to just go to wallstreetraider.com, all one word, wallstreetraider.com, or to roninsoft, RONINSOFT.com. Those are my two websites, and there's plenty of information on it. And they can download a free version of it. That's limited. You can't play real long games with it. But a lot of people, really quite a few people, from the download numbers I've seen, just never bother to get the paid version if they're satisfied with the short, the kind of limited version, because it still has almost all of the features in it. So I would say check it out, try the free version, and if you like it, it's a Windows program, so it does require Windows. If you like it, it's not very expensive. And in fact, I have a second program that's kind of a spin-off of it called Speculator. That's really more, probably for kids. It's probably a better place to start. It's a little bit more basic, and it's also cheaper. But it's just a stock and bond, commodities, options trading game, where you don't take over companies. You're more like just a small investor and just trying to play among the elephants without getting stepped on. And it still has the same basic engine with all of over 1,000 companies and everything. So in a good many ways, it looks a lot like Wall Street Raider, because that's where I took most of the code from. But it's more like a starter version.
So from version 1 to version 9 in 36 years.
Yeah, it's been a long progression.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Michael. It's my great pleasure and my honor as a fan of yours.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good day to you.
Good day. Bye-bye.